Chapter 3: Opposites Attract. Cornell University was nothing at all like Ruth City High School. The hilly campus spread over 2,000 acres in upstate New York. A lake sparkled below. Wooded paths wound around ivy-covered buildings. Still, Ruth soon fit right in. It was easy to like Ruth. She was soft-spoken and kind. She was pretty, with long, soft, dark hair and big blue eyes. And she was crazy smart. Her friends were in awe of Ruth's laser focus. You could drop a bomb over her head, and she wouldn't know it, one classmate said. When the dorm got too noisy, Ruth escaped to a bathroom stall to study. For a while, Ruth had no clear career goal. Then she became aware of something troubling that was taking place in the U.S. Senate. A Red Scare, an extreme fear of all communists, was sweeping across the United States. A senator named Joe McCarthy was taking advantage of people's fears. McCarthy accused many decent Americans of being traitors to the United States, of wanting to destroy the country. He hauled them into the Senate for hearings, and he threatened them with prison if they didn't turn over their friends. Careers were ended and lives were ruined. Who could stand up for the accused? Lawyers could and did. They defended citizens' right to free speech. The Constitution says you can believe whatever you want. What does a lawyer do? Any American who is accused of breaking a law is entitled to a fair trial. Some people will defend themselves in court, but most have a lawyer represent them because lawyers have been trained to understand the legal system. Not all lawyers are trial lawyers, and not all lawyers take on criminal cases. Some help people draw up contracts when they buy a house, make a will, or get a divorce. Ruth's future husband became a tax lawyer who helped clients, often big companies, work through complicated tax problems. Ruth became a constitutional lawyer who took on cases about citizens' rights in the United States. For the first time, Ruth began to think a career in law might be right for her. Lots of guys at Cornell had asked Ruth on dates. They were nice, but no one interested her very much. Not until Marty Ginsburg came along. Marty was Ruth's opposite. He was outgoing, the life of every party. Ruth was quiet and shy. He was tall. She was short. Ruth was serious. Fun-loving Marty cracked jokes and made Ruth laugh. Together, they just clicked. Marty and Ruth proved the old saying, opposites attract. In the 1950s, girls at Cornell often felt they had to hide how smart they were. At that time, boys didn't seem to like brainy girls because most guys looked for wives to take care of housework and children while they made a living. Not Marty Ginsburg. He loved Ruth's lively mind and her desire for a career of her own. Marty was the first boy I ever knew who cared that I had a brain, said Ruth. Soon the two were talking about a future together, a future in which they would both be lawyers. But a lady lawyer? There were few in the 1950s. So what? Ruth made up her mind to go for it anyway. Aiming high, Marty and Ruth both applied to Harvard University. Harvard accepted them both. Since he was a year older, Marty started at Harvard while Ruth stayed to finish at Cornell. She graduated in 1954, number one among the female students. Just a few days later, she married her sweetheart. From then on, her name was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Years later, Ruth would say, "Meeting Marty was by far the most fortunate thing that ever happened to me." As things turned out, law school had to wait a while for the Ginsburgs. The couple headed instead to an Army base in Oklahoma. Marty had been called on to serve 2 years at Fort Sill. Sharpshooting Marty liked teaching at the Army Artillery School, but Ruth had some trouble at her desk job at the Social Security office. One day she told her boss she was pregnant. The news had overjoyed Ruth and Marty, but not her boss. He cut her salary and lowered her job rank. Bosses back then didn't think pregnant women belonged in the workplace. Schools and businesses often fired pregnant women on the spot. There were no laws to protect these women. For now, Ruth stayed quiet. That would certainly change later. A few months later, Ruth and Marty welcomed a baby daughter. They named her Jane. The new parents became pioneers in a new kind of family life. They shared family chores as equal partners. Even though Marty worked full-time, he didn't expect Ruth to do all the parenting. After all, she worked too. Marty shopped, cleaned, and helped care for the baby. Plus, he took over the cooking. Ruth couldn't cook a tasty dish, no matter what. After 2 years in Oklahoma, it was time to leave and go to law school. But worries ate at Ruth. Jane was just a year old. Other mothers at that time stayed home to raise their children. Maybe she should too, and give up her dream of becoming a lawyer. Her father-in-law helped Ruth decide. He told her it was perfectly fine if she wanted to stay home, but if her heart was set on law school, she should stop worrying and find a way to make it happen. That was wonderful advice that I followed all my life, Ruth later recalled. When a decision came up, she would ask herself, "Do I want this enough? If I do, then I could find a way."